For those of us who didn't have to become, but are, understanding the state is not a task of expressing enough aggrandizement, but of locating the words at all, a delicate endeavor to extract the state we know from the romance and hoopla. Perhaps the indigenous people, overwhelmed with the pomposity and cruelty of the Spanish explorers and missionaries, would agree. I can't begrudge California to those who sought it as a source of hope, as the last romance of the last western frontier, or simply for its unrivaled resources from agriculture to precious metals to recreation. After all, if my parents hadn't come, one with a family reeling from the Depression, the other as an implicit gesture of post-war personal independence for women, I wouldn't have been one of the fortunate, one of the upshots of someone's flight of fancy, to be born there. But like those who have left hometowns and home states and now call themselves Californians, those who sit in the stadium in San Diego and cheer for the Chicago Cubs or New York Mets, those who dock their sailboats at Quivira Basin, De Anza Cove, or Shelter Island, and send yearly contributions to orchestras or museums back east, tisk-tisking the bankruptcy of the symphony in San Diego. Like their lifelong allegiances to other more worthy places, no matter where else I am, I'll not ever not be a Californian. That was the conclusion of Displaced, the introduction to my memoir, Indigenous, Growing Up Californian. I'm going to read portions with real-time parentheses. It has been at least a dozen years since I wrote Displaced. Now California is not currently a place of hope or beginning or even home. It's a place where my mother lies dying in a hospital bed, in the room I shared with my sisters from 2nd through 12th grade. Outside of that room is 1/3 of an acre where my father's beloved gardens lie fallow and parched. Trees have died. Houses where dogs bark and power tools grumble and radios boom hover just over the property boundaries. Outside of that property, Spring Valley, San Diego County, Southern California thirsts, burns, slides off hillsides. I return to say goodbye to my mother again and again. She dies so slowly. On a snowy January evening in the 90s, in a western suburb of Chicago, I watched a documentary called California and the Dream Seekers. But I didn't need to be reminded that the world reflects on California from the perspective of those who yearned to be there. California's history is a linear succession of great migrations, conquistadors and Franciscan missionaries, gold rush prospectors, Chinese laborers escaping their country's exhausted resources, Midwestern Dust Bowl farmers fleeing both environmental and financial ruin, movie star pipe dreamers, and contemporary migrant agricultural workers. The state's growth into a region with the world's 8th largest economy is credited to those and other pilgrim castle builders who came to it as a place of unbounded possibilities. Over nearly a century and a half, hundreds of thousands of people elected to turn toward California for what they wanted or who they aspired to be. But what of those who were born there? Jostling for space with the transplants and snowbirds and immigrants, we haven't really known a wow, look where I am wonderment, and I'm lucky to be here glow. We're there because we've always been there. Media's depiction of the place may engulf or dupe us, but for many natives it does not. We scoff at, even rebel against the notion of California as land of the ocean view condo, land of the forever young Coppertone beach baby, land of the year-round, after-work, buffed-out executive surfer, land of the sunglassed, convertible-driving blonde aerobics instructor, land of the cult of the month, of palm-treed boulevards made just for rollerbladers, of psychedelic black-lit drug parties begun in the 60s that have never ended, of drive-in churches and drive-through espresso bars, of crystalline blue, cloudless skies sailed everlastingly by a hang glider and his dog, a vegetarian restaurant on every block, a guru on every corner, a Lana Turner on every drugstore stool. But if we didn't choose this enchanted place to live out or chase our visions, if we are a generation or two removed from those that dared to hunt a dream, does it mean we don't dream? Or don't have the same quality of dream? Or don't have the same fortitude because we're not required to uproot and resettle in this unique region in order to help make our dreams possible? Does it mean California, either the real or the fanciful, doesn't influence or put its distinct mythic stamp on our dreams and on who we become? Mine was an anti-Hollywood California in every meaning of the metaphor, including literally. My parents taught at an exclusive private boarding school where children of stars, musicians, and CEOs mingled. My siblings and I would have attended that same school, but our parents elected to leave so that we wouldn't grow up touching that world. Touching it, talking to it, sitting in classrooms beside it, but with our realities of income and opportunity so very far removed from it. Segregation by class was chosen to protect us from what so much of the world wants to rub up against. Moving to Chicago in 1993, I was not too obliquely informed that displaced Californians are presumed to be ashamed of where we've come from and should only admit to missing the weather. During my interview, I was asked if I would be able to leave San Diego's weather. 8 months later, at a department reception during the first week of my first semester in Chicago, a senior member of my department sidled up to me to make introductory small talk. She politely asked where I'd chosen to live. With only slightly guarded verve, I informed her I'd found a one-bedroom cottage with a big yard in Elmhurst, 18 miles west of the Loop. "Why, there," she responded, not bothering or unable to conceal her disgust. "There's nothing there you couldn't find in Southern California." Long after my stammered response, I realized that this person, who obviously had the stock intellectual's intolerant view of Chicago's suburbs, had an even dimmer stereotyped opinion of Southern California. Looking askance at the suburbs might come naturally for an academic in Chicago, but where might her view of California have come from? What sources are there except inane TV shows, magazines, and slick popular novels that depict Southern California as either a witless wasteland or a vast tract of bland, white middle class with no deeper thought than what color stucco should houses in the community be made of, and no nobler pursuit than getting a tan during lunch hours? If this college professor seemed to actually hold pop media's shallow view, what does it reveal about her and all the tens of thousands like her? What must she have been reading or watching in order to develop such a view? What indeed does Southern California possess that either isn't found in Greater Chicago and/or could be worthy of notice by an educated person? And could I possibly miss anything other than the weather? That's how shallow Californians presumably are. Among the things I miss are canyons, hills, bluffs, and mountains. A soft tawny color most of the year, until days after a rainfall when a tint of fuzzy green begins to pervade, then overwhelms the brown. I miss the sharp scent and graceful silhouette of eucalyptus trees and the midnight caterwaul of a coyote pack making a kill. I miss ranch houses with walls of picture windows overlooking valleys or canyons or with views of hazy hills. I miss college campuses and museums built in red-roofed Spanish-style architecture, the dry furor of Santa Ana winds, and the zinging white streak over green grass of another Tony Gwynn opposite field single. Like me, Gwynn was a graduate of San Diego State University a few years after me. Now Tony Gwynn is dead. My mother was an athlete. But the issue today shouldn't just be death and dying, the end of childhood or a dream. California carries a burden of expectations, what it's supposed to be and mean and do. This part of California as well helped make me. Returning, do we sometimes look at each other like strangers? If I don't recognize the California I left, does it mean the Californian in me is fading? Or actually, what's gone is what was never there, the Californian I was expected to be and never was. When I arrived at Brooklyn College in the early 80s, a fellow student, upon hearing I was from California, responded, "Oh, California? Isn't everything really laid back there?" Laid back? Of course I'd heard the term, but had never been asked to apply it to myself or my experience, or even to give a particular example of its manifestation. Laid back, chill out, mellow out, everything's cool, go with the flow, whatever makes you happy, have a nice day, find yourself, get in touch with the inner child, take it easy, I'd rather be surfing, hey dude, whatever. Did my life fit on a bumper sticker? Was it laid back to plug my ears during the detonation of the shotgun, but keep my eyes trained on the falling bird so I could retrieve it, decapitate, and drain the blood? To take away the hammer and hand my father the knife after he'd cracked a rabbit's skull? To throw not just balls, but sticks by the thousands and even rocks into the tumbleweedy, foxtail-filled canyon to be retrieved by a pedigreed dog whose ancestors had strutted in dog show rings? To spend teenaged afternoons marching with a trombone under an oppressive glare of sunshine, and spend teenaged weekends doing the same in full-dress wool uniform, being judged on musical and military precision? To participate in family outings gathering the rejects of a farmer's harvest that's been dumped behind the trucking docks? To earn minimum wage spoon-feeding pureed spinach into a profoundly mentally and physically disabled 10-year-old's mouth after you've changed his diapers? To hike miles up and down a Sierra Creek bed with a rod and reel, engrossed body and mind solely in a contest with wily native trout? To watch one's husband, dressed in white tie and black tails, pace in a picket line outside Symphony Hall? To see the clear ripples of heat in the air, watch the rain of ashes, and stand in the current of fleeing grasshoppers as the yearly brush fire thunders up the hill toward our property line? To have one's grandmother drown in a swimming pool? To sit like a stone during sex therapy while a charlatan pigeonholes you as a Puritan? To time and again attempt to make pets of lizards, crawdads, snakes, frogs, tortoises, horned toads, and other indigenous things that slithered through seasonal runoff creeks or crawled through the brush of arid coastal scrub, which the rest of the world doesn't seem to know isn't a lush, palm-treed tropical paradise? I was at first dismayed that my state citizenship had been called to the test, and that I would fail right out of the gate to really be what the world seemed to hold so dear, a Californian. I would evolve to realize that my non-laid-back experience has, in fact, been a variation of, my particular rendition of, the real thing. Living amidst 20% of the world's fresh water, I still don't flush every time. Don't sweep with a hose, will never water my lawn. I continue to consider myself on a freeway when I drive tollways and expressways. I root for the White Sox because I know what it's like to love a team that's the unwanted stepchild. Today I passed over the lavender and bought eucalyptus-scented bubble bath, still seeking a serenity I've only glimpsed now and then.